Hello, Internet. How are we doing today? Truly, 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 from me to you, I want to give you that space and I want to give you that validation while we sit here and ask ourselves, how are we doing? This is quite a time to be alive, to say the least, with everything happening in the world. I have to say, being 25 years old and seeing what's happening in our world is pretty fucking terrifying. And I think every day personally, in my personal journey, I have different waves of emotions and feelings. Obviously, rip the Band-Aid off. I am a white woman talking about these things. I completely understand that I'm a person of access and privilege. Talking about these things that I'm going to talk about in this video and talking about the state of the world, I am in no way, shape, or form in quotation in imminent danger like Black and brown and POC folks are in the Latino community. But I am in solidarity with these movements, and being Chicago native and grown up here and seeing parts of my home being ripped apart does affect me. And when we are in a time where what we look like is held against us, nobody is safe, no matter who you are, what you look like, where you live. And I think a lot of people don't realize that this current presidential administration has been unraveling and doing this work for decades. None of what's happening today has just happened overnight because of our current president. This has been decades in the making, and it is just coming to fruition today because all the chess pieces match. And I have really tried to ground myself and not try to overcome with anger and fear and distrust, disappointment, because those feelings and emotions are valid, yet they're not going to help do anything. And I think that brings me to my next point, is that this feels very defeatful. And I experienced that a lot today. I feel very defeated as a 25-year-old trying to figure out where she wants to be in the world. And a place like this today is really sad. And I feel even guilty having that thought, because people are losing their life right now. And I think that there are so many ways as an individual that you can resist. We see history repeat itself. We look back at Jim Crow, look back at 1940s America, right? We have gone through this before, unfortunately. This isn't new. This is just adhering to our current day of way of life and how that's orchestrated today is happening through the overthrow of basically our Constitution. I also know that there's a threat to free speech on the internet. And I personally, as a human being, will never stop talking about what is happening and the injustice and dehumanization happening in the world. And I encourage everyone else to not be afraid as well, because the internet is very powerful, and being a Gen Z, I think the internet is a part of our life, and I'm never going to let fear or scarcity take away from sharing my voice. And I encourage you to do the same. I was watching this video on TikTok, and a TikToker who's a Graduate School of U Chicago was talking about how we have seen these happen before. We have seen this happen before. We've seen this before, unfortunately. That we can look back at our history books and see how to deal with it, because it's easy to disassociate. It's easy to fall into those emotions. It's easy to feel helpless and that there's nothing that you can do. And there are things that you can do in this very moment. One thing that she talked about that I preach so much is talk to your neighbor, is create community within yourself. Talk to the people around you. They were even really talking about get into community or create community with people that are into farming or into growing produce in the place where we get to a point where that is inaccessible. But I believe that we should really value the people around us and create those small victories of community. And maybe that is for you saying hi to the neighbor you never talked to. Maybe that is making the plan to be around somebody. Angela Davis recently came to Chicago to speak, and I wasn't able to see it, which is so heart-wrenching to me. But she talked about how bravery is a collective, and that this is just no time to be alone. And that if you are alone, how can you create courage or bravery? Because it is a collective. And I think we've seen so many people, especially in Chicago, people running for congressional office on the grounds, using their physical body as resistance. Whether it's in protest, whether it's using your physical body as a barrier. And I think those are the people of our time, of our generation, that are going to go down in the history books like Angela Davis and like civil rights activists that we know today that fought their fight. And now it's ours. I also think that this is such a time to educate yourself on American history. It's this other thing that this wonderful TikToker said that I'm like trying to multitask and look on my phone, but I think I'm just going to put it in the comments because that'll just be easier. However, they also were discussing really educating yourself on your history to see in fascist times what people were doing to resist. And I think today go take ice resistant training. There was just one at Mather High School. Looking into community and organizers volunteering their school watches. So there's a list of people, teachers calling to come to their middle school to watch for ice. There are so many ways to educate yourself. And I also think there's something else that this creator didn't talk about, but I also think it's really powerful, is having conversation. I will say I hated college. I'd never go back to school. Not a place personally for me where I felt like was a successful environment for me. I enjoy learning, but not in a hierarchical setting. But I will say that the one thing that I really miss that I think would have totally grounded me would be those sort of conversations in my education. Granted, I did kind of have a restorative justice major, so talking about the world and what's happening and injustices and talking about nonviolence action to social change and activism was a pretty constant conversation for me in college and in my education. However, I think it's really important to talk to people, have these conversations. Even if people disagree with you, even if they are, on their side, if you can muster up the courage, it is so important. It is so important to have these conversations. And if you are in an environment where you feel like you can't have this conversation, I think you should ask yourself, is this an environment that I should be in? Because silence is never the right way. And if you feel like you need to silence yourself to protect yourself, that is your alarm that you are in the wrong environment. Or maybe you do have the courage and the bravery to be the whistleblower in that environment, to be the conversation starter. Even if everybody disagrees with you, your resistance is powerful. And I think that should completely be validated. And above validated, just triumphed. Because your voice is very powerful. I also want to talk about your power as a consumer. And I talked about this a few times, and that the power of your dollar is so important. We are in a time now more so than ever that businesses that feel aligned to you, you should be supporting. And that if that's a small business, your local small business workout class place, or your local small grocery store, find places where you want to invest your dollar. Don't, certain corporations, of course, we know the big ones, Starbucks, McDonald's, etc. Those are already pretty not the best organizations that deserve your money, to say the least. But really researching and finding, maybe Latino owned local grocery stores, or, just your consumer dollar is so important. And I think we don't really realize that. If something is free, you are the product, right? The internet, everything you do, the algorithm is tracking you because it wants to sell you certain things, right? We know that. Okay? So think about how every dollar you spend in your money is going back into the system. So where do you want your money to end up? And maybe it is inconvenient. Maybe it does make you take an extra bus. Maybe you do have to spend more money at the local grocery store because their produce might be more expensive than a Target or something like that. But at the end of the day, your money is going into a better person's pocket. And that has a ripple effect in our economy than really anything else. And you have so much power there. And I wish that was talked about enough, because so powerful. And I also believe that we really have to stick together. And that, like I was saying, your community is everything right now. Your friends are everything right now. If you feel like you're in an environment where you're not getting what you need from the people around you in regards to these topics and situations, if they're compliant or silent, that is your radar that you need to build more community. And I think that can be really intimidating. I think that also sounds pretty ignorant halfway on my part, because it's like, how do we do that in crisis? How do we do that when everything is literally in flames? I think go out there, go to these spaces, go to the ICE training, comment on certain social media posts. That's a part of the algorithm. And I think, social media is a powerful place where you can really meet people and meet like-minded people. I feel like I really had to just say something, even like me, just like post this random video on YouTube talking about your experience, because what is happening in the world right now is far from okay. And it's really intimidating to have your whole life in front of you when it feels like we're in such an unknown more than ever before. And my body and my soul and my ancestors, I send all of that power and love to anybody who's been affected by what is happening right now. And I am so sorry that people are getting their families torn apart, and that there is no more trust than there ever has been before between our law enforcement and people, civilians. And it is just heartbreaking that we're here today. But we have done this before. I'm sorry, guys, my snot. We've seen people do this before. We've seen people be political prisoners. We've seen people do this work. Something that Angela Davis was saying in her lecture was that we are on the right side of history, and that people in this administration are trying to interrupt the course that we're on, and they're not going to get away with it, because we as a community are too powerful. And I just give all my love to the people that are sacrificing themselves to do the work on the street in Broadview. My whole heart is with you, and I thank you so much. I have so much love for everybody, and I hope that we are staying as safe as possible, and I hope that we're hugging all of our loved ones and saying I love you to them. And I don't want to end the video when I'm crying, so I'm trying to get it together. And I just have to say that we are always so much stronger together, and that there is so much power in that. And I refuse to choose defeat. And I hope you do too. So until next time.